Hello, my name is Tom, 36, and my wife, Lily, 34, seemed thrilled about starting over in our new home. It was supposed to be our dream place, a fresh start after years of grinding to afford this kind of life. The sprawling house with its sleek, modern touches needed more than just furniture. Lily insisted on an interior designer, someone to give the space the charm it deserved. That's where Eric and Sarah came in. They were the perfect team. Eric, 38, was a suave and charismatic designer with a sharp eye, while Sarah, 35, handled the business side, organizing everything from budgets to schedules. They were married, successful, and seemed so compatible it almost hurt to look at them. Lily raved about their style after our first meeting, especially Eric's vision. From the beginning, Eric and Lily hit it off. His artistic flair appealed to her, and it was easy to dismiss the early signs as professional admiration. I mean, Eric was always touching her arm or leaning in too close. But hey, designers are expressive, right? Plus, Sarah was always around, and she seemed cool and confident about their relationship. I trusted Lily, even if Eric made me a little uneasy. I got busy with work, leaving Lily to handle most of the project. She and Eric were constantly communicating, texts, late-night emails, even coffee meetups to discuss last-minute changes. Whenever I brought it up, Lily brushed it off, saying, "It's all part of the process, Tom." Looking back, the clues were all there. Sarah came over once to review the financials with me, apologizing for the rushed bills Eric kept submitting. She seemed tired, almost irritated, but I chalked it up to stress. Running a business with a perfectionist must be exhausting. Then, things got weirder. One night, I came home earlier than usual and found the house in chaos. Paint swatches on every surface, empty wine glasses on the counter, and no Lily. When I called her, she said she was helping Eric with something urgent at his studio. She sounded off, defensive. When she came home hours later, she smelled like his cologne, claiming she'd bumped into him leaving. By this point, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know how to confront it without sounding paranoid. Then Sarah texted me out of nowhere. It was short and cryptic. "Can we meet? I think we need to talk about our spouses." My stomach dropped. We met at a quiet cafe the next afternoon. Sarah didn't waste time. "Eric's been acting different," she said, her voice tight. "I don't have proof, but I think something's going on between him and Lily." I froze. I wasn't ready to hear it said out loud. But Sarah had more. "He's been distant for weeks, barely at home, always saying he's working late. And Lily? She's always around, isn't she?" "Innocent. That's from last week," she said, sliding the phone across the table. "Eric told me he was meeting a client. I guess he forgot to mention it was your wife." That night, I couldn't sleep. I wanted to confront Lily, to demand answers, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was a stupid hope that this was all some misunderstanding. I needed more. And more came, delivered straight to my inbox by Sarah. She'd done some digging, even going through Eric's work emails. Attached were screenshots of late-night messages between Eric and Lily, full of inside jokes, flirtations, and a suggestion to stay over after one of their supposed meetings. I didn't know what to do. I felt angry, humiliated, and lost. But Sarah wasn't done yet. "I have a proposition," she said when we met again. Her voice was sharp, her eyes colder than before. "If they want to destroy our marriages, we don't have to sit back and let them. Let's take control." I didn't know what she meant at first. It was a crazy idea, but the glint in her eye told me she wasn't bluffing. I didn't know how to respond to Sarah's proposition. The idea of doing anything with her felt complicated. She leaned back in her chair, waiting for me to say something, her gaze cutting through the awkward silence like a blade. "What do you mean by take control?" I asked cautiously. Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "If they're going to betray us like this, maybe it's time we even the playing field. Think about it. They're sneaking around behind our backs, tearing apart everything we thought we knew. Why should we sit here and play the victims?" I frowned, unsure where she was going. "So, what? We confront them? Sue them? What's your plan?" Her expression darkened. "No. Confronting them just gives them the upper hand. I'm talking about turning this around on them." She leaned in closer, her voice lowering. "Look, Tom, I'm not asking for some dramatic revenge scheme, but maybe we remind them what they're throwing away. And if it happens to hurt a little, well, they've earned it. I didn't know what to say. It sounded crazy, wrong. But then again, so did the idea of my wife in Eric's arms. A pang of shame hit me, followed by the sharp sting of anger. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked, my voice colder than I meant. Sarah sighed and sat back. It's simple. They've built their little fantasy world, right? But fantasies aren't real. Let's bring them back to reality. Maybe we make a statement they can't ignore. I stared at her. And how do we do that? Her response caught me off guard. We do what they're afraid to admit. They want to cross boundaries? Fine. We'll cross one of our own. You and me. My jaw tightened. It felt like a test, like she was daring me to agree. Part of me wanted to shut the whole thing down, to be the bigger person. But another part, a darker, angrier part, felt a flicker of temptation. I hated that part, but I couldn't silence it. Why? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's eyes softened for a moment, a glimpse of vulnerability breaking through her cool demeanor. Because I'm tired of feeling powerless. And I think you are, too. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The idea was wild, desperate, and reckless. But wasn't that exactly how I felt? Desperate, reckless, and so angry. The next few days passed in a blur. Lily was still acting distant, her attention buried in her phone or lost in long errands that stretched late into the night. Every time she walked through the door, I found myself scrutinizing her movements, her tone, her excuses. She didn't seem to notice or care that I was pulling away too. Meanwhile, Sarah and I exchanged a few messages, each one testing the waters. Sarah, have you thought about what we talked about? Me? I'm not sure. Sarah, I get it. It's a big step, but trust me, it's better than sitting here feeling like a doormat. Me, what if it makes things worse? Sarah, worse than being cheated on? Look, Tom, I'm not saying this is the perfect solution, but sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. I didn't respond after that. Her words stuck in my head, twisting around my thoughts like a relentless storm. Was she right? Was this what it would take to reclaim some control over my life? Then, everything came to a head. It was a Friday night when Lily announced she'd be working late on some design changes with Eric. She didn't even bother looking at me when she said it, her focus on grabbing her coat and keys. My chest tightened with fury, but I forced myself to stay calm. Sure, I said, my voice flat. Don't wait up. Her eyes flicked to mine for a moment, a brief flash of guilt. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. I won't, she said, and then she was gone. I stared at the empty doorway, the silence in the house almost suffocating. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Sarah, is she out? Me? Yeah, with Eric. Sarah, want to talk? I hesitated. This was the moment. The choice. I could shut it all down, tell Sarah no, and try to salvage whatever was left of my crumbling marriage. Or I could take the leap, follow this twisted road, and see where it led. I grabbed my coat and typed a single word. Me, yes. Sarah's house was surprisingly modest, tucked into a quiet neighborhood a few streets over from ours. She opened the door almost immediately, her expression unreadable. She was dressed casually, jeans, a simple blouse. But the way she stood there felt anything but casual. There was a tension in the air, a silent understanding of what this meeting might mean. Come in, she said, stepping aside. I walked past her into the living room, my nerves buzzing. She closed the door behind me, the sound echoing in the stillness. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then Sarah broke the silence. You don't have to stay if you're not ready, she said softly. I looked at her, searching her face for something. Certainty? Permission? I didn't know. I'm here, I said finally. Let's talk. She nodded and led me to the couch. We sat close, the unspoken weight of our situation pressing down on both of us. I hate them for what they've done to us, Sarah said quietly, her voice trembling with emotion. But I hate feeling helpless even more. Her vulnerability cracked something inside me. I reached for her hand without thinking, the warmth of her touch grounding me. We deserve better, I said, my voice firmer now. Both of us. Sarah met my gaze, her eyes shimmering with a mix of anger and sadness. Then let's take it. We sat there, teetering on the edge of something irreversible. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't alone. I woke up the next morning feeling like I was walking a tightrope between relief and shame. Nothing had happened between Sarah and me, not yet. Anyway, we'd spent hours talking, venting, and finding comfort in shared pain. The tension was there, thick and undeniable, but I had stopped short of crossing the line. But now, in the daylight, my resolve was weaker. As I stared at my phone, I saw the unopened messages from Lily. Just casual check-ins, but they felt loaded with lies. My chest burned with the weight of everything I hadn't said, everything I wanted to scream in her face. And then there was Sarah's last text. Sarah, I'm here if you need me. The words lingered in my mind all day, an invitation I wasn't sure I had the strength to resist. By evening, I caved. When I arrived at Sarah's house again that night, she opened the door with a hesitant smile. This time, she didn't say anything, just stepped aside to let me in. I followed her to the kitchen, where she poured 2 glasses of wine without asking. She handed me one, her fingers brushing mine. So, what's the latest? She asked, trying to sound casual, though her voice betrayed a slight tremble. Lily's still out, I muttered, taking a long sip of the wine. Apparently, Eric needed her help with some last-minute design adjustments. The bitterness in my tone was sharp enough to cut glass. Sarah sighed. Same story here. Eric's been working late, all week. He barely even pretends to care anymore. We sat at the small kitchen table, the silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. It was a strange comfort, knowing someone else was drowning in the same chaos. I hate this, I admitted, my voice breaking slightly. I hate feeling like a fool. You're not a fool, Sarah said firmly, leaning closer. They're the ones making a fool of themselves. They don't deserve us. Her words hung in the air, daring me to believe them. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of something other than despair, an ember of defiance. You said something before, I began cautiously, about taking control, about us. Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes locked on mine. Yeah, I meant it. They don't get to ruin our lives without consequences. And what if this just makes everything worse? I asked, though my resolve was crumbling. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Then at least we'll know we fought back. It was a moment I couldn't undo. I leaned in, and so did she, the space between us disappearing in an instant. The kiss was hesitant at first, but the floodgates opened quickly. All the anger, betrayal, and longing poured out in that desperate, fiery connection. The next few weeks were a blur. Sarah and I became each other's escape, a secret bond forged in the wreckage of our marriages. We weren't delusional. We knew this wasn't love or a fairy tale solution, but it was a way to feel alive again, to remind ourselves that we weren't invisible. Lily and Eric were too wrapped up in their own affair to notice the shift in me. If anything, Lily seemed more carefree, her guilt replaced with the thrill of her double life. I watched her with a mix of disgust and resignation, knowing it was only a matter of time before everything imploded. And then it did. One evening, Sarah showed up at my door, her face pale and eyes wide with panic. She pushed past me into the living room without waiting for an invitation. They know, she blurted, pacing nervously. What? Who knows? Eric and Lily. About us. The words hit me like a truck. How? Sarah stopped pacing and turned to face me. Eric went through my phone. He found the messages. My stomach churned. What did he say? He's furious, obviously. He stormed out, said he was going to tell Lily everything. I sat down heavily on the couch, my mind racing. So, what happens now? Sarah hesitated, then sat beside me. We wait, and we prepare for the fallout. The fallout came faster than I expected. Lily confronted me that same night, her face a mask of rage and betrayal. You're sleeping with Sarah? She screamed, throwing her phone at me. The screen showed one of the messages I'd sent, something innocuous but damning in context. I stared at her, my own anger boiling over. Her expression faltered for a moment before the mask snapped back into place. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Lily. I know about you and Eric. I've known for weeks. Her face crumpled, a mix of shock and shame replacing her fury. You knew? Yeah, I said, my voice cold. And while you were sneaking around, I was trying to figure out how to salvage what was left of this marriage. But now, I don't care anymore. Lily sank onto the edge of the couch, tears streaming down her face. Tom, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I laughed bitterly. A mistake? No, Lily. A mistake is forgetting to pay the electric bill. What you did was a choice, a selfish, disgusting choice. She didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. In the end, neither marriage survived. Lily and I filed for divorce, and so did Sarah and Eric. The process was messy and brutal, leaving scars that would take years to heal. Sarah and I drifted apart after everything settled, our connection a fleeting rebellion that couldn't withstand the weight of reality. Life didn't magically get better after the dust settled. There were lonely nights, financial struggles, and the daunting task of rebuilding a future from the ashes. But in a strange way, I felt free from lies, free from pretending, and free to start over. If I learned anything, it's that betrayal doesn't have to define you. It breaks you, sure, but it also forces you to grow. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Goodbye.